Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Martial Universe Season 10 Part 71 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. After the sneak attack from the 7th Seat King, Darkness City had clearly beefed up its security. However, Lin Dong and the rest understood that such defenses had little effect against someone as powerful as the 7th Seat King. Ultimately, they still had to rely on their own strength. Thankfully, they were able to stop the sneak attack by the 7th Seat King. Moreover, the latter was also seriously injured. According to what the Thunderbolt Master said, it was likely that Devil Prison would not dare to do anything more in the meantime. After all, though Devil Prison was powerful, the current situation in the world was uncertain. Therefore, without absolute confidence, they would not dare to act wantonly. Lin Dong and the rest stayed for a day in Darkness City. Meanwhile, Qingtan had finally subjugated the hearts of everyone within Darkness Palace. Therefore, Darkness Palace was considered to be completely under her control and no one would ever dare to rebel against her. Hence, at this juncture, he could finally take this little girl back to the Eastern Xian region. There was a spatial formation slowly distorting the sky above an empty square in Darkness City. Meanwhile, waves of wild and violent spatial strength were being emitted from it. Palace Master, the spatial teleportation formation has been set up. You can use it anytime you want. A black-robed elder looked at the teleportation formation that was set up, before he lifted his head and spoke respectfully to the black-dressed girl standing beside him. Qingtan nodded gently upon hearing this. Then, she said, Elder Chen, during this period of time where I am gone, you will take my place and oversee the entire Darkness Palace. If any major incidents occur, shatter the communication talisman that I gave you and I will hurry back immediately. Understood. That black-robed elder replied respectfully after hearing this. After giving her orders, Qingtan nodded her small face. After which, her delicate figure moved before she appeared on a platform that was located at a short distance away. Subsequently, a sweet smile appeared on her small face which had a stern-looking expression previously, before she hugged Lin Dong's arm and smilingly said, Big brother Lin Dong, we can go now. Lin Dong smiled and nodded upon hearing this. Then, he turned to look at Ling Qingzhu before he said, Let's go. After he spoke, he swung his sleeve before the three of them appeared within the teleportation formation. Meanwhile, there were countless experts from Darkness Palace kneeling respectfully below them. Goodbye, Palace Master. Orderly and respectful voices sounded at this moment. Qingtan nodded gently to everyone below. After which, she waved her small hand, before she activated the spatial teleportation formation. Immediately, an extremely violent spatial fluctuation spread. Then, resplendent silver light surged and wrapped around the three of them. Buzz! That resplendent light erupted, forcing the crowd to narrow their eyes immediately. When they once again opened their eyes, the three people in the sky had already vanished. The only thing left was a distortion in that empty space. By the time the Lin Dong trio tore through space and arrived in the Eastern Xian region, it was already 3 days later. Nonetheless, this method was clearly several times more efficient compared to when he first headed over. Moreover, if he wished to travel back to that location in the future, he could use the spatial stamp that he left behind. Therefore, there was no longer a need to travel through the tens of thousands of large mountains. Lin Dong walked out from within the distorted space. Then, his eyes swept across his surroundings before he turned and looked towards the north. Promptly, a strange expression flashed across his eyes before he asked, Where is that? Ling Qingzhu looked in that direction. Then, she immediately glanced at Lin Dong before she softly said, That is where the unique devil region is located. Unique devil region. Lin Dong involuntarily sighed softly after he heard the name of that place, which had left a deep impression on his mind. Back then, he and his two brothers were forced to flee miserably by Yuan Gate in that place. Since we are here, let's head to the unique devil region. Lin Dong said. He still remembered that back in the unique devil region, there was an elder called Old Man Fen Tian whom he was indebted to. However, that elder ended up sacrificing his physical body in order to suppress a Yimo general. Back then, Lin Dong thought that a Yimo general was an unbeatable foe. However, as of now, it was likely that he could easily kill numerous Yimo generals with the flip of a palm. Ling Qingzhu and Qing Tan naturally did not object to his suggestion. Immediately, they nodded their heads. When he saw this, Lin Dong stopped hesitating. Then, he waved his hand before the three of them transformed into rays of light and streaked across the sky. In a couple of minutes, they had already traveled thousands of miles. Following which, a massive city appeared within Lin Dong's sight. As he looked at this somewhat familiar-looking city, a look of reminiscence appeared in his eyes. Back then, he and his two brothers experienced a bloody fight with Yuan Gate at this location. However, it was not a good ending for them. Lin Dong looked at Unique Devil City standing in front of him. It was a long while later before he moved. In the next moment, they were already standing outside the Unique Devil region. Following which, the space in front of them gently trembled, before an ancient formation became vaguely visible. This was a formation passed down from the ancient times, and it was used to seal the demonic aura within the Unique Devil region. Back then, Lin Dong had to wait for the seal to weaken in order to enter this place. However, as of now, he no longer had to do so. With a wave of his sleeve, the empty space was split apart. Then, their bodies moved before they entered directly. As they entered the Unique Devil region, there were many adventurous experts below, who were eagerly waiting for the Unique Devil region to open up. When they saw the powerful techniques unleashed by the Lin Dong trio, all of them were stunned. Naturally, Lin Dong did not care about these little details. After he entered the Unique Devil region, he immediately surveyed his surroundings. It has been a few years since he came, but there was still faint demonic aura lingering over the Unique Devil region. Looking afar, this place looked ancient and desolate. Meanwhile, there were many large gullies on the ground, indicating that a frightening big battle had occurred in this place back in the past. The Lin Dong trio did not linger here for long, as they directly headed towards the deepest part of the Unique Devil region. With their current strength, what was once the forbidden grounds of the Eastern Xian region obviously posed no hindrance to them. Therefore, in less than 10 minutes, they had already reached the deepest part of the Unique Devil region. Relying on his memories from 3 years ago, Lin Dong soon came to a stop. Then, his eyes looked into the distance. There was a huge crimson volcano standing at that spot, and it was even possible for him to vaguely spot a statue-like figure on top of that volcano. Lin Dong slowly drifted towards that volcano. Meanwhile, that figure looked just like a stone statue, and his body was covered with dust. Furthermore, that lava volcano was also emitting a powerful energy wave, preventing anyone from approaching it. However, that energy wave was completely useless against Lin Dong. Elder. Lin Dong bowed towards that human statue, who had died. Although his strength had likely far surpassed that of old man Fen Tian, the latter used all of his remaining life force to form a pill just before he died. After which, he gave that pill to Lin Dong. Over the years, Lin Dong had always kept this favor in mind. This elder has already died. Is it still possible to rescue him? Ling Qingzhu used her bright eyes to look at that human figure, who was covered with dust, before she softly said. Back then, she was also present when that incident occurred. Therefore, she naturally knew that Lin Dong had received many favors from this elder. His situation is a little unique. He has not completely died. In the past, in order to suppress that Yimo general, he turned himself into a zombie, allowing him to live forever in order to suppress that Yimo general. Therefore, from a certain point of view, old man Fen Tian has not completely died. Lin Dong shook his head and said. Back then, before he left, he once asked old man Fen Tian about it. The latter said that if Lin Dong wanted to rescue him, he should return only after he had understood reincarnation. As of now, although Lin Dong had yet to advance to the reincarnation stage, he had indeed touched reincarnation. Moreover, his mental energy had also reached the Supreme Symbol Master level, and even an ordinary reincarnation stage expert was no match for him. This elder turned himself into a zombie. However, his body is currently filled with death chi, and he has lost all his life chi. This is also the reason why he died. If we can provide him with sufficient life chi, it should be possible to wake him up. Qing Tan used her large eyes to observe this person, who had died. Then, she pondered for a moment before she said. Lin Dong nodded in agreement. Then, he smiled at that figure and said, Elder Fen Tian, back then, you gave me all the life qi within your body. Today, I shall return the favor. Lin Dong extended his hand after he spoke. Immediately, monstrous yuan power swept forward. Meanwhile, life and death qi were perfectly merged within his yuan power. Then, a thought passed through his mind before a dense white light was segregated from within his yuan power. Moreover, that white light was filled with extremely pure life qi. As that life qi spread, Lin Dong flicked one finger before that vast and mighty life qi transformed into a huge swirl. Meanwhile, in the middle of the swirl, was the body of old man Fen Tian. Life qi spread. After which, it continuously surged towards that figure. In fact, the amount of life qi present caused some greenery to emerge on the top of this volcano. The death qi within the body of old man Fen Tian was extremely dense. In fact, even a reincarnation stage expert would face some difficulties if he wanted to balance the life qi and death qi within old man Fen Tian's body. Thankfully, Lin Dong was completely different from before and the amount of yuan power within his body was as vast as an ocean. Moreover, with his mental energy assisting him, old man Fen Tian's skin, which previously looked like dried tree bark, gradually turned soft after half a day. After which, a faint life qi began to seep out from within his body. While Lin Dong channeled his yuan power, his mind shook gently. After which, some of the reincarnation will that he inherited from the devouring master merged with his life qi. Finally, the life qi, that permeated the sky, transformed into a cream-white pill before it directly flowed into old man Fen Tian's body through his head. Old man Fen Tian was a top expert who had touched reincarnation and he was only one step away from the reincarnation stage. Back then, he failed to make a breakthrough. Currently, with the help of the reincarnation wool from the devouring master, he might be able to break into the reincarnation stage. The moment that white pill entered the body of old man Fen Tian, his seemingly dead body suddenly trembled gently. After which, a vibrant red color appeared on his elderly face, before he slowly opened his eyes. He was in a daze as he opened his eyes. After which, he saw a smiling young face. Old man Fen Tian slowly opened his eyes before he looked at the young man standing in front of him. In his mind, he felt like that face was somewhat familiar looking. However, he frowned as he tried to clear his mind. Although he was able to live forever after he made himself into a zombie, compared to an ordinary man, there were still some differences. You, old man Fen Tian spoke in a lost tone. Elder Fen Tian, this junior is called Lin Dong. I met you once 3 years ago. With a gentle smile on his face, Lin Dong clenched his hand before a bright red cauldron appeared. It was the burning sky cauldron that old man Fen Tian gave him back then. Moreover, this treasure helped Lin Dong to survive numerous crises over the years and it even saved his life. Is that the burning sky cauldron? Old man Fen Tian was staring in shock at the burning sky cauldron. Promptly, his eyes seemed to have brightened slightly as he hurriedly took it. Then, he used his eyes to size up Lin Dong. A moment later, as if he recalled something, he spoke in a startled voice, You are that little fellow from back then? Old man Fen Tian did not have a clear concept of time. Within his blurry memories, he seemed to recall that he once met Lin Dong many years ago. After that, he even gave his burning sky cauldron to the latter. However, he did not expect that when he once again left the darkness, that young man who looked extremely weak in his eyes back then, was now in possession of such terrifying strength. He could clearly detect the pressure radiating from Lin Dong's body. In fact, that pressure caused the life and death qi within his body to become a little sluggish. Lin Dong nodded his head gently and said, Back then, Elder mentioned that if I wanted to rescue you, I will have to return after I understood reincarnation. Although I have yet to reach that level, I believe that I possess the strength to wake you up. Old man Fen Tian was startled. With a complicated expression in his eyes, he looked at the young man in front of him. Back then, he thought that he was going to die for sure. It was also why he gave all the life qi within his body to Lin Dong. This was merely a convenient gesture before he died. However, who could have imagined that this small act of kindness would actually allow him to reap such great benefits in the future? Young friend, thank you. Old man Fen Tian released a deep sigh, before he slowly bowed towards Lin Dong. What he had given Lin Dong back then was hardly worth mentioning compared to what he had received now. Elder, there is no need to be so courteous. Currently, the life chi and death chi within your body are once again in equilibrium. If you can advance to the reincarnation stage, you might be able to escape from your zombie state and become genuinely alive once again. Lin Dong waved his hand and said, Sai, how can it be so easy to escape from this zombie state? It is impossible to detect reincarnation in my state. Old man Fen Tian sighed and said, That may not be true. Elder, feel the insides of your body. Lin Dong gave a mysterious smile before he said. Old man Fen Tian was startled upon hearing this. He pondered for a moment before he sensed his body as told. Soon after, shock surfaced on his elderly face. After which, that shock intensified before it turned into joy. Are these reincarnation wool? Previously, I obtained an inheritance from an elder. I will be giving this reincarnation wool to Elder Fen Tian. Lin Dong smilingly said. Old man Fen Tian was so grateful that his body began to tremble while tears rolled down his elderly face. Originally, he thought that he would have to spend the rest of his life in his current state, which was worse than death. However, who could have thought that not only was he able to awaken, but his body once again possessed reincarnation will. As such, he once again possessed the qualifications to attempt to break through to the reincarnation stage. When Lin Dong saw how excited old man Fen Tian was, he gently smiled. Although what the latter gave him in the past was hardly worth mentioning now, Lin Dong still felt tremendous respect towards an honorable man like him, who was willing to turn himself into a zombie in order to suppress the Yimo. Therefore, now that he was able to help him, Lin Dong naturally felt extremely happy as well. Young friend, I will never forget this huge favor. In the future, if you ever need my help, I will make sure that I do everything that I can. Old man Fen Tian bowed excitedly towards Lin Dong. However, the latter quickly stopped him. Elder is far too courteous. Lin Dong smiled and shook his head. He was just about to speak when his expression suddenly changed. This was because he realized that the volcano was trembling gently. Meanwhile, an extremely dense demonic aura seeped out from beneath the volcano. Oh no! That Yimo general, whom I have been suppressing, has awakened. Old man Fen Tian was startled when he saw this. All along, he had been sitting in place and suppressing that Yimo general. However, now that he had awakened, that Yimo general had actually followed suit. Bang! After his voice sounded, the demonic aura beneath the lava became even denser. In the next instance, the demonic aura began to flow with the lava before it eroded the entire volcano. Within less than a dozen breaths, the entire volcano was turned into dust by that demonic aura. After that large volcano disappeared, an extremely frightening demonic aura soared towards the sky. Following which, a devil figure bellowed from within the demonic aura. Moreover, his aura was several times more powerful compared to before. When that lava old man sensed the strength of the demonic aura, his expression changed dramatically before he involuntarily cried out loud, "How is this possible? That Yimo general has actually evolved." A tinge of shock flashed across Lin Dong's eyes when he heard this. He was naturally able to tell that the strength of this Yimo general had soared and he had clearly reached the level of a Yimo king. This fellow was very formidable. It turns out that while he was being sealed, he was actually accumulating his strength in an attempt to break into the Yimo king level. Moreover, he had actually succeeded. Oh no, young friend Lin Dong. All of you should leave immediately. That Yimo general has successfully evolved into a king and he is comparable to a reincarnation stage expert. I am afraid that I can no longer suppress him. Old man Fen Tian hurriedly said. TSK, old ghost Fen Tian, you didn't expect this, did you? Not only was I not turned into dust under your suppression, but I even managed to make a breakthrough in that hopeless situation. Now that I have advanced to the king level, how can you possibly fight against me? Demonic aura permeated the sky. That devil figure stood in the sky as he looked at old man Fen Tian. Meanwhile, his sinister face was filled with a cold expression. Old man Fen Tian clenched his teeth. He was just about to go all out and block this Yimo king, when Lin Dong extended his hand and stopped him. Then, the latter looked at the Yimo king, who was laughing arrogantly, before he smiled and shook his head. I have even fought with the 7th seat king from the devil prison. A mere Yimo like you, who has just advanced to the king level, actually dares to act so arrogantly in front of me. What a joke. His arrogant laughter came to a sudden halt. Then, that Yimo king stared at Lin Dong in shock, before he quickly mocked, "What nonsense are you sprouting? The 7th seat king is a great man that can match up to the ancient masters. Someone like you is merely an ant in his eyes." Lin Dong smiled. However, he stopped arguing with him. Instead, an icy chill slowly rose within his eyes. Rumble. All of a sudden, thunder resounded across the sky. Following which, thunder clouds came from all directions and gathered in the sky. Meanwhile, there were countless thunderbolts dancing within them, while an extremely frightening ripple spread. When he saw this scene, the Yimo king was greatly startled. Immediately, he lifted his head before he stared in shock at this scene. Meanwhile, he felt extremely uneasy in his heart. There's something strange about this fellow. That Yimo king was not a fool. When he saw this formation, he felt danger rising within his heart. Then, his eyes glimmered before he quickly retreated. Old man Fen Tian, who was originally preparing himself for a huge fight, was startled when he saw that the Yimo king was retreating. However, even before he could speak, Lin Dong gave a faint smile. Then, he clenched his hand before the space around that Yimo king became distorted. Following which, 4 huge black holes appeared, trapping the Yimo king within, before an extremely violent tearing force erupted. This immediately frightened that Yimo king, forcing him to wildly circulate his demonic aura in an attempt to block that attack. Bang! Countless thunderbolts were gathering in the sky. Finally, they transformed into a 10,000 feet large lightning dragon that came whistling down ferociously. Then, under the shocked stare from that Yimo king, it charged into that sealed black hole prison. Boom! A lightning sun erupted in the sky, before wild and violent thunderbolt force spread. In fact, a significant amount of the demonic aura in the sky above the unique devil region were also removed. A miserable scream was being emitted from within the lightning sun. After which, old man Fen Tian was stunned when he saw that extremely arrogant Yimo king, who had just made a breakthrough, disappearing at a frightening rate. In the next instant, he had vanished from this world. This? Old man Fen Tian's eyes were filled with shock. He had fought with the Yimo many times and naturally knew that they had an extremely powerful life force. In fact, even an ultimate reincarnation stage expert would have difficulties killing a Yimo king, and all they could do was to seal it. However, Lin Dong had easily killed a Yimo king. His abilities were far too terrifying. Lin Dong patted his hands as the thunder clouds in the sky scattered. Meanwhile, there were hardly any emotions in his eyes. With his current strength, an ordinary Yimo king was no match for him. Moreover, this fellow had just advanced to the king level and he actually dared to act so haughtily in front of him. That arrogant bastard was completely out of his depth. Young friend Lin Dong's techniques have truly left me in awe. I have embarrassed myself previously. Old man Fen Tian slowly recovered his senses. Then, he looked straight at Lin Dong before he sighed. Only now did he finally understand how powerful this young man, who needed his help back then, had became. Lin Dong grinned. He looked at the Yimo king, who had disappeared, before he turned to look at the ground below. Then, he involuntarily frowned. Logically speaking, after one was sealed, even if one didn't gradually lose one's strength, one shouldn't be able to make a breakthrough. Therefore, why did such an odd case occur? Moreover, there was a massive gap between the general level and the king level, and it was extremely difficult to advance from the former to the latter. Lin Dong frowned and pondered for a moment. However, he did not make any progress. Hence, all he could do was to shake his head. Perhaps that fellow got lucky. Elder Fen Tian, where do you plan to go now that the Yimo has been eliminated? Lin Dong looked at old man Fen Tian and asked. My old life has been bestowed by you. Since that fellow has been eliminated, if you don't mind, can I follow beside you? Old man Fen Tian pondered for a moment before he smilingly replied. After all, he was someone from the ancient times and he did not know anyone now. Therefore, he naturally had nowhere to go. It just so happens that I am heading back to my clan. Since Elder Fen Tian has nowhere to go, you can stay in my clan as a guest elder if you are interested. Lin Dong smiled. Old man Fen Tian was extremely powerful. Therefore, if the latter stayed in his Lin clan, he could help to protect his family members. To begin with, since old man Fen Tian had nowhere to go, he did not object as he quickly nodded with a smile. When he saw this, Lin Dong stopped lingering in this place. He waved his hand before he quickly left the unique devil region. However, right before he left the unique devil region, he involuntarily turned his head and glanced at this place. For some unknown reason, an uneasy sensation had rose deep within his heart. However, it was an extremely faint sensation and it disappeared in a flash. Promptly, a doubtful expression flashed across his eyes, before his body moved and he disappeared. Outside the unique devil region, Lin Dong's four-man group appeared in a flash. As old man Fen Tian looked at the outside world, which he had not seen for tens of thousands of years, he involuntarily sighed. Let's head straight to the Great Yang Empire. After resolving the matter regarding old man Fen Tian, Lin Dong was clearly in a good mood. Therefore, he immediately laughed before he said. Qingtan and old man Fen Tian did not object upon hearing his words. However, Ling Qingzhu bit her red lips. Then, she stared at Lin Dong before she slowly shook her head. I'll be heading back to Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace. The Great Yang Empire is in a completely different direction and we should part ways here. You aren't coming with us to the Great Yang Empire? Why? Lin Dong was a little stunned as he stared at Ling Qingzhu. Ling Qingzhu's bright eyes paused on Lin Dong's face. Then, she smiled faintly before she said, Are you planning to bring me back to your home? Do you know what this means? Lin Dong was speechless. If he brought Ling Qingzhu back to the Great Yang Empire, wouldn't it feel like he was bringing back his wife to meet her parents-in-law? I think that my whole family will welcome you if you are willing to come. Lin Dong pondered for a moment before he replied. You should only say these words after you've sorted out the emotions within your heart. Otherwise, you might ultimately feel a little imbalanced in your heart. Ling Qingzhu smiled faintly before she said. Lin Dong was stunned. Then, his expression changed involuntarily. He naturally understood what Ling Qingzhu was saying. She was extremely proud and even though Lin Dong wanted to bring her back to the Great Yang Empire, she wanted Lin Dong to do so willingly without any hesitation. Ling Qingzhu looked at Lin Dong's expression before she secretly sighed. Then, a somewhat bitter smile was formed on the corner of her red lips, which were hidden under her veil. After which, she ceased hesitating as she turned around and drifted off. You have already learnt the Zenith sensing art. Therefore, there is no reason for me to stay anymore. My Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace is still under reconstruction. As the palace master, I should not be away for long. Therefore, I'll return to the palace first to study reincarnation. Let's part ways here. Lin Dong stared at Ling Qingzhu's beautiful figure as she turned around. Meanwhile, he felt a little terrible in his heart. Suddenly, he clenched his teeth before he extended his arm and grabbed her delicate jade-like wrist. You traveled all the way to the northern Xian region together with me and even taught me the Zenith sensing art. If I simply allow you to leave like this, others will say that I, Lin Dong, am an ungrateful person. Lin Dong frowned and said. Regardless, you will have to go to the Great Yang Empire together with me. After that, I will personally send you back to Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace. Otherwise, I will not let you go. Ling Qingzhu's wrist was being grabbed by Lin Dong. Moreover, when she heard his words, she felt secretly embarrassed. Why is this man so overbearing? She had always been an extremely independent and opinionated person. However, when she saw Lin Dong's frowning face, she could only gently clench her teeth, but she was unable to pull herself away from him. Standing beside them, when Qingtan saw their actions, she immediately curled her lips. Let's go. Lin Dong did not wait for Ling Qingzhu to voice her objections, as he directly pulled her and headed in the direction of the Great Yang Empire. The latter struggled briefly, but Lin Dong's metal pincer-like hands remained firm. Finally, she could only give up. Then, she gently gritted her teeth before she stared at the man in front of her. This person, he was truly unreasonable. The capital of the Great Yang Empire. Currently, the capital city was clearly a lot more prosperous compared to the flourishing city in the past. Moreover, the Great Yang Empire was no longer a tiny low-rank empire. Forget about those super empires. Because of the Lin clan, even those super sects did not dare to act disrespectfully towards this former low-rank empire. The reason for this was common knowledge within the Eastern Xian region. There was an extremely spacious manor in the northern region of this city. This was the most respected place within the entire Great Yang Empire. In fact, even the palace of the capital, which was at a short distance away, could not compete with it. This manor was where the Lin clan was located. Currently, it was possible to vaguely see some statue-like figures quietly seated on various vantage points around the manor. They were experts from the tiger-devouring army. Although Little Flame and the rest had returned to the demon region, they left 1,000 tiger-devouring army troops behind to protect the Lin clan. Therefore, with this force around, it was obvious that no one would dare to plot against the Lin clan. Currently, the Lin clan enjoyed a high status within the Great Yang Empire. However, after Lin Xiao became the new tribe leader, he used some ruthless methods to clean up the clan. In fact, clansmen who abused the Lin clan's name and tarnished its reputation were the ones who were subjected to the harshest punishments. However, no one in the Lin clan dared to object to Lin Xiao's harsh methods. In fact, even those extremely experienced elders had no choice but to submit to him. This was because everyone clearly knew how the Lin clan managed to obtain its current status. Lin Xiao's efforts to clean up the clan were also quite effective. As such, the Lin clan was no longer as arrogant as before. In fact, it was rare to hear of Lin clan members who would take advantage of their clan's reputation to misbehave. Therefore, this allowed the reputation of the Lin clan within the Great Yang Empire to rise stealthily. Suddenly, a few rays of light flashed across the horizon of the capital, before they streaked across the sky. In a couple of flashes, those rays of light had already entered the capital before they headed straight towards the Lin clan. Meanwhile, the troops from the tiger-devouring army, who were guarding the Lin clan, also detected this. However, the caution on their faces quickly disappeared. Instead, a heated and reverent expression took its place as they hurriedly knelt down on one knee. Many members of the Lin clan were startled when they saw this scene. Promptly, wild joy surged within their eyes. After all, they knew that the only person in the Lin clan who could command such respect from these extremely powerful individuals was that legendary man. Junior tribe leader is back. A frantic and joyous commotion erupted within the entire Lin clan instantly. Lin Xiao, who was in the meeting room, had also detected the commotion within the clan. Soon after, he hurriedly led some elders and walked out. The instant they came out, they saw that several lights were flashing in the courtyard in front of the meeting room. Finally, a couple of figures appeared. Donga. When she saw Lin Dong, joy immediately appeared on Liu Yang's face, who was standing behind Lin Xiao. Meanwhile, standing beside her, Lin Xiao was also full of smiles. Lin Dong grinned at them. Then, he moved aside, revealed the girl hiding behind him. You. Qingtan. Liu Yang and Lin Xiao were startled as their eyes widened immediately. Father, mother. Initially, Qingtan was still a little hesitant. However, when she saw the tears rolling down Liu Yang's face, her eyes turned red immediately. Following which, she began to sob before she leapt into Liu Yang's embrace. Liu Yang hugged her carefully, before she looked at her familiar face. It has been many years since they met and her small face was no longer as immature looking as before. However, this only caused Liu Yang's heart to ache. In fact, this heartache was even more intense compared to the one she experienced, when she thought of the hardships that Lin Dong must have suffered while he was roaming outside. You lass. Over all these years, you never sent us a message. Are you trying to drive us mad? Liu Yang hugged Qing Tan tightly. After which, she involuntarily extended her hand before she violently smacked that girl's buttocks in anger. Qing Tan moaned. Her small face was red as she wiggled in Liu Yang's embrace. Judging by her current demeanor, in no way did she resemble that cold and stern palace master of Darkness Palace. In fact, she looked exactly like a little girl who had been caught red-handed after leaving home on her own. Humph, you're finally willing to return? Lin Xiao asked with a stern expression. Father, I really missed you. Qing Tan grabbed Lin Xiao's large hand before she smilingly said. Lin Xiao snorted and he was just about to scold her. However, when he saw the brilliant smile on her beautiful flower-like face, he found himself at a loss for words. There was no telling just how much hardship this lass had suffered on the outside over the last few years. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. It's good now that you are back. However, if you dare to leave home without telling us in the future, I will get your big brother to punish you. Lin Xiao snorted. However, his tensed face slowly relaxed. Then, he extended his large and rough hand, before he rubbed Qing Tan's small head and sighed, but, it's good that you are back. It's good that you are back. Father, mother, sorry. I've learned my lesson. Qing Tan's eyes reddened after she heard Lin Xiao sighing in relief. She had also been through a lot over the past few years. Therefore, she knew how precious and valuable the selfless pure love from Lin Xiao and Liu Yang were. When Lin Dong saw his parents sighing, he gently smiled. Their family was finally reunited. Liu Yang hugged Qing Tan. Then, she suddenly spotted Ling Qingshu, who was standing beside Lin Dong. Immediately, she was stunned. At this moment, the latter had already removed her veil and revealed her gorgeous face. Despite this, Liu Yang still managed to recognize her. Promptly, joy rose in her eyes as she quickly tugged Lin Xiao's sleeve. Lin Xiao finally recovered after being reminded by her. Then, he smilingly looked at Ling Qingshu, before he coughed dryly and said, Donga. Since you have brought a guest back, why didn't you introduce us to her? Lin Dong was speechless. Didn't they meet her before? Beside him, when Ling Qingshu saw the scene in front of her, her face became slightly flushed. In the past, when she came to visit Lin Xiao and Liu Yang, she chose to do so as Lin Dong's friend. Therefore, none of her visits were as ambiguous as this one. Moreover, there were so many members of the Lin clan in her surroundings staring at her. Junior Ling Qingshu greets the both of you. Ling Qingshu bowed slightly before she said in a soft and respectful manner. She was a lady that was so gorgeous that her looks could devastate an entire country and she had a cold demeanor. However, her rarely seen gentle and subservient demeanor caused even Lin Dong, who was standing beside her, to become somewhat absent-minded. Unknowingly, countless Lin clan members had scaled the walls around this courtyard. In fact, some of them even resorted to climbing the large trees outside. After which, they were all staring in shock at that absolutely gorgeous lady. In fact, many of them were salivating. Soon after, a commotion erupted. What a gorgeous fairy-esque lady. What relationship does she have with brother Lin Dong? Isn't it obvious? Big brother Lin Dong brought her back to our Lin clan to meet his parents. What relationship could they possibly have? Big brother Lin Dong is truly skilled. Although the commotion occurred outside the courtyard, given Ling Qingshu's senses, she could naturally hear all their conversations. Soon after, her pretty face became boiling hot. Then, she clenched her teeth gently before she glared at Lin Dong, who was currently smiling in an embarrassed manner. Ha ha, it's actually Miss Qingshu. Liu Yang smiled as she walked forward and held Ling Qingshu. However, her eyes were continuously sweeping over the latter's body. Meanwhile, joy and satisfaction was present in her eyes, and she could not hide it no matter how much she tried to. Hence, under her gaze, the embarrassment within Ling Qingshu's eyes intensified. However, she could only brace herself and face Liu Yang head-on. Liu Yang clearly liked Ling Qingshu a lot. Moreover, she knew that the latter had a cold and indifferent character, and did not like to be the focus of attention. Therefore, Liu Yang quickly pulled her and Qing Tan back into the house. after which, countless disgruntled cries sounded from around the courtyard. This caused Lin Dong to be slightly annoyed, as he promptly scanned the place with his sharp eyes. Immediately, many figures standing on the walls of the courtyard began to shrink backwards in a miserable fashion. Following which, howls sounded from around the courtyard. The commotion within the clan caused by Ling Qingshu refused to die down for a long time. In fact, everyone in that huge manor was talking about her, and many members of the Lin clan were filled with envy. Although they were merely able to catch a glimpse of her appearance, Ling Qingshu's absolutely gorgeous looks and her cold demeanor was something that even shocked Lin Dong occasionally. Therefore, even less needed to be said about these young clansmen who had little experience in the outside world. With regards to the commotion caused by Ling Qingshu, Lin Dong felt extremely helpless as well. In fact, he hardly had the opportunity to talk to her. That was because Liu Yang seemed to really fancy Ling Qingshu. Therefore, after she pulled her and Qingtan into the house, there was no activity for a very long time. Clearly, they were chatting happily. When Lin Dong saw their lineup, he decided not to interrupt. After chatting with Lin Xiao for a while, the latter suddenly smiled before he patted his shoulders. Then, he pointed forward. Lin Dong turned his body and looked over. Then, he saw a couple of figures quickly walking towards him. The person in front was a pretty lady, and she was slightly older than Lin Dong. Meanwhile, she was rather familiar looking. Currently, there were 3 men walking behind her. Although they had not met for a very long time, Lin Dong still recognized them immediately. Soon after, waves began to stir within his calm heart. The 4 of them were actually Lin Xie, Lin Hong, Lin Shan, and Lin Changqiang. They were all Lin Dong's close blood relatives, and they grew up together back in Qingyang town. Although they had some conflicts when they were young, now that he thought back of those times, he felt warmth in his heart. Lin Dong. That pretty lady was staring at Lin Dong. When she looked at this young man, who looked a lot more mature compared to when he first left Qingyang town, a trace of unconcealable shock flashed across her eyes. However, there was still some hesitation in her eyes. After all, they had not met for a very long time, and Lin Dong was no longer that weak young man who fought and played with them back in Qingyang town. Forget about the Lin clan. It was likely that there were hardly any individuals in the entire eastern Xian region that was worthy of Lin Dong's attention now. That young man from Qingyang town was now an ultimate expert standing at the top of this world. Sister Lin Xie, it has been a while since we last met. As Lin Dong looked at Lin Xie, a gentle smile appeared on his face. However, he also noticed the hesitation within the eyes of Lin Xie and the rest. Hence, he promptly smiled before he extended his arms and hugged Lin Xie. Soon after, he also hugged the Lin Hong trio. After all, he had experienced too many life and death situations. Therefore, he greatly valued these brothers and sisters, who had a direct blood relation with him. When Lin Xie's 4-man group saw what Lin Dong did, joy surged on their faces, and they were no longer as restrained as before. Immediately, Lin Xie pulled Lin Dong before she spoke continuously. At this moment, she no longer looked like a menacing big sister. The brothers Lin Hong and Lin Shan smiled directly towards Lin Dong. They had frequently caused trouble for Lin Dong when they were kids. However, they subsequently suffered quite a heavy loss in Lin Dong's hands. Currently, they possessed a rather high status in the Lin clan. At times, all they had to do was to speak about how they fought with Lin Dong in the past, and they would immediately receive worshipful gazes from numerous Lin clan members. Lin Changqiang was still as round as ever. This fellow fancied Qingtan ever since young. In the past, he frequently followed behind Lin Dong in order to look for the opportunity to talk to Qingtan. At that time, he had a pretty solid relationship with Lin Dong. Lin Dong and the 4 of them chatted and laughed. As he looked at their familiar faces, he slowly began to recall the various incidents that happened back in Qingyang town. Now that he thought about it, even someone like Lin Dong, who had been through numerous life and death situations, still felt faint warmth surging within his heart. Ling Qingshu, who was chatting with Liu Yang in a room, lifted her head slightly. Her eyes looked towards the window before she coincidentally saw Lin Dong's face. His face seemed to have regained some of his tender and youthful looks from before. Moreover, his tender and youthful looks caused her to suddenly recall the first time they met. "Miss Qingzhu." Liu Yang called out softly before Ling Qingzhu quickly came to her senses. Then, she looked at Liu Yang's eyes, which were smiling, before she blushed. Following which, she quickly said, "Please call me Qingzhu." Liu Yang smiled and nodded. Then, she said, "Qingzhu, Donga did not bully you, did he? You can tell me if he dares to bully you in the future and I will deal with him." When Ling Qingzhu heard her words, she felt a little dizzy and she did not know how to reply. All she could do was to curse Lin Dong secretly in her heart. Subsequently, Lin Dong introduced old man Fen Tian to Lin Xiao. The latter was extremely courteous when he heard the other party's status. After all, a powerful expert like him could easily become the chief of a sect in the eastern Xian region. Therefore, it was truly a blessing for the Lin clan if such a powerful expert was willing to become their guest elder. Owing to his connection with Lin Dong, old man Fen Tian was also exceptionally courteous to Lin Xiao. The both of them chatted before old man Fen Tian finally agreed to temporarily stay in the Lin clan. In any case, he knew no one else in this world. Moreover, he quite fancied the idea of staying behind and teaching some young fellows. When he saw that they were chatting happily, Lin Dong stepped back with a smile. After which, he slowly roamed around the huge Lin clan. Along the way, he saw many members of the Lin clan. When they saw Lin Dong, all of their eyes became heated. This was no different even when he met the elders of Lin clan. When Lin Dong saw this, he smiled bitterly. Promptly, he turned around, before he found a secluded path and walked along it. Lin Dong was walking along a rock path within the woods. Meanwhile, disjointed patches of light shone downwards and enveloped his body. This lazy and relaxed sensation caused a faint smile to appear on the corner of his lips. It felt good to be home. Lin Dong leapt onto a large tree. After which, he leaned and laid down lazily on a tree branch. Gently shooting both his eyes, he gradually fell asleep. He napped for the entire afternoon. Only after the sun set, did he slowly open his eyes. Meanwhile, both his eyes were as peaceful as the deep night sky, causing one to become intoxicated by them. The vast and mighty ocean-like mental energy within his Niwen palace seemed to have stealthily solidified. Lin Dong stretched his waist, before he moved and leapt down. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly looked into the deepest part of the woods. At that area, he could vaguely sense a mental energy fluctuation. Meanwhile, that fluctuation felt remotely familiar. There are so many friends here. Lin Dong sighed softly after he detected that mental energy fluctuation. Then, he pondered for a moment before he walked further in. After which, he saw a lovely figure quietly seated beside a small pond within the woods. That lovely figure was wearing a plain dress and she had a quiet and elegant demeanor. Looking from the side, she looked rather beautiful. Moreover, this face was somewhat familiar looking to Lin Dong. Lin Kua. He met her back at Yang City. Furthermore, it was because of her that Lin Dong went to that old tomb, which subsequently led to that ridiculous incident between him and Ling Qingzhu. At this moment, it seems like Lin Kua was in training as there were vast and mighty mental energy floating around her. Moreover, it seemed like she had reached the peak of the Heaven Symbol Master. If she advanced one step further, she would advance to the initial Divine Symbol Master level. In the past, Lin Dong realized that Lin Kua was practicing her mental energy. Unexpectedly, she had made good progress over the years. Lin Dong stared at this scene. After which, he gave a faint smile before a thought passed through his mind. Following which, a wave of mental energy was stealthily emitted before they wrapped around Lin Kua's mental energy. This episode ends here.